Could an entire city disappear without leaving behind a single scream? No trace of blood, not even a clear message, just one word carved into a tree. CROATOAN. And from here, the story begins in 1587. A small group of people arrived on a remote island in the New World, an island known as Roanoke Island. They weren't soldiers, they weren't treasure hunters, they were families, men, women, and children. About 115 people. They came carrying a simple dream to start a new life, far from poverty, far from wars, far from Europe. But they didn't know that this island would be the last place they were ever known to exist. At first, everything seemed normal. The land was fertile, water was available, hope was present in every step. Houses were built from wood. The boundaries of the settlement were drawn and laughter echoed in a place no humans had lived before. But behind that calm, there was something unsettling, something unseen yet deeply felt. The local inhabitants were not always friendly. The relationship was tense and sometimes dangerous. Despite that, they had to continue because there was no way back. At the center of the story was one man. His name was John White, the governor of the colony, a man carrying the responsibility of everyone. One day, he made a decision that would change everything. He chose to return to England to bring supplies, food, tools, support. He promised them he would return quickly before the supplies ran out, before hope turned into danger. But the world was not on his side. War broke out between England and Spain. The sea became a battlefield. Ships could no longer move freely. What was supposed to take weeks turned into years, 3 full years, 3 years with the colony alone and no support, no supplies, no protection. What happened during those years, no one knows, no one heard, and no one survived to tell the story. In 1590, John White finally returned, his heart filled with hope and fear. As the ship approached the island, he searched with his eyes for any sign of life, smoke movement, anything. But there was nothing. He stepped onto the shore. The silence was strange, not the silence of peace, but the silence of emptiness. He moved toward the settlement, every step heavier than the one before, until he arrived. And then the shock. The colony was gone, not destroyed, not burned, but gone. The houses had been dismantled, the wood carefully removed, the tools missing. There were no signs of chaos, no signs of a fight, as if the people stood calmly and chose to disappear. But why and where? He began searching, calling out, shouting their names, but no one answered. No sound, no echo, only the wind moving through the trees. Then he noticed something, a carving on a tree, one word, CROATOAN. And he stood there trying to understand, was it a message, a clue, a final cry? The word wasn't random because there was a place with the same name, a nearby island, CROATOAN Island. He thought for a moment. Did they move there? Did they leave? But why didn't they leave a clearer message? Why didn't they mark a direction? Why didn't they write more here? The doubts began. Some said maybe they were under pressure, maybe they had no time, maybe they were escaping. But from here, the theories begin. The first theory, that they simply moved, they left the place and went to CROATOAN Island, where the local people were more cooperative, a logical idea, realistic. But there's a problem. There is no proof, no clear trace of them was ever found there, not even remains that confirm their presence. The second theory, darker, that they were attacked, killed, wiped out. But where is the blood? Where are the weapons? Where is any sign of resistance? Reality says there is nothing. The third theory, the strangest, that they merged, left their old lives behind and became part of native tribes. They changed their language, their identity, and disappeared into another society. Some stories say that later tribes had lighter eyes, different hair, but is that evidence or just coincidence? And here we reach the real problem. Every theory seems possible, but none of them is certain. No final proof, no clear answer. And that is the worst part of this story, to remain suspended between possibilities, between logic and mystery. But there is something else that many don't talk about. John White himself had a plan. He wanted to go to CROATOAN Island to search to find out, to end this mystery. But nature intervened. A powerful storm stopped him, forced him to turn back. And he never got the chance, ever again. Was it just a coincidence, or was the truth never meant to be discovered? Years passed, decades passed, centuries passed, and the story remained an open mystery, a question without an answer, a disappearance without explanation. Even today, after more than 400 years, the question still stands. What happened to them? Did they leave by choice, or were they forced? Did they die or live another life under different names? And most importantly, why didn't they leave any trace? Were they afraid, or was there something that prevented them from leaving one? Imagine this scene. A quiet night, people asleep. Then something happens. Something unexpected. Something that forces 115 people to leave everything behind in silence. No screams, no resistance, no chaos. Could that really happen? Or is there a part of the story that was never told, and maybe never will be? Because some stories leave no witnesses, no traces, only questions, and one word carved into wood, CROATOAN. So is that word a sign of survival, or the last proof that they were once here? And if the answer is still hidden, are we truly ready to know it? Or are some mysteries meant to remain buried forever? But what if the story didn't end there? What if that word CROATOAN was not the end of the mystery, but the beginning of something far more disturbing? Because years later, strange details began to surface. Stories, whispers, observations that didn't quite fit into any logical explanation. Some explorers claimed they saw tribes with features that didn't match the native people entirely. Eyes lighter than expected, hair different in texture and color. And most unsettling of all, a few words that sounded familiar, English words, broken, distorted, as if they had been passed down through generations, slowly fading but never completely disappearing. Could it be that the colonists didn't vanish, that they didn't die and didn't leave, but instead they changed? Imagine this. A group of people trapped hungry, alone, the supplies are gone, hope is fading, and survival becomes more important than identity. So they make a choice. They leave behind everything they knew, their language, their names, their past, and they become someone else, not out of desire, but out of necessity, a silent transformation. No records, no announcements, no trace, just disappearance. But even this theory has cracks because history is cruelly precise when it wants to be, and yet there's no confirmed record. No undeniable proof that ties those tribes directly to the lost colony. So again, we return to the same place, the same question, what really happened? But here's where things get darker. Some researchers began to look deeper, not just at what was found, but at what wasn't. Because sometimes absence is louder than presence. No bodies, no ruins, no weapons, no signs of struggle, not even a hurried escape. Everything was too clean, too organized, too intentional, as if whoever left had time to dismantle homes, time to carry belongings, time to erase themselves completely. And that leads to a terrifying possibility. What if they weren't running? What if they were being led, not forced, not chased, but guided step by step away from the place they built into something unknown, something they trusted or believed? They had to trust, and if that's true, then who or what could convince an entire colony to walk away without fear, without resistance, without leaving a single warning behind? This is where the mystery stops being history and starts becoming something else, something harder to explain. Because logic tells us there must be an answer, a clear sequence of events, a rational explanation. But the deeper you look, the more the logic begins to fade. And what remains is a silence, a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that feels like something is missing. Not just people, but truth itself. And maybe that's the real mystery of Roanoke. Not what happened to them, but why. After all this time, we still don't know why. No final clue was ever found. Why no evidence survived. Why every path ends in uncertainty, as if the story was never meant to be solved. As if something made sure of that. So now, after centuries, we are left standing in the same place as John White, looking at that single word, CROATOAN, trying to understand, trying to connect the pieces, trying to answer a question that refuses to be answered. And maybe the most unsettling thought of all is this: what if the truth was simple, but was lost? Not because it disappeared, but because no one survived to tell it. Or worse, what if someone did survive, but chose never to come back? And if that's the case, then somewhere far from where they started, those 115 people didn't vanish. They just became a story no one would ever recognize. And maybe that's why the island still feels empty. Not because nothing happened there, but because whatever did left perfectly, no noise, no trace, no goodbye. Just a word still carved into wood, waiting for someone to finally understand it.